everybody. This is Pastor Susan, and welcome to another day of devotions as we are looking this week at the stories of our faith as recorded in the Gospel of Luke. One of the things that I want to just kind of raise to you as a point to be made is that the Gospel of Luke is written by not a first-hand account, but by Luke, who says he had eyewitnesses that told him these stories. So they are grounded in the testimonies of others. They are also grounded in historical fact. And so we are looking at the story today, continued story today of Zechariah and Elizabeth, real people, ordinary people, both of them coming from the direct lineage of the priests and Levites in Israel's history, and who had an amazing encounter with God through the angel Gabriel. Zechariah did, and I want to talk just a little bit. I mean, I think I can speak to this a little bit personally. As someone who has not had children, biologically has not had children, and one who is dealing, and lovingly so, dealing with an aging parent. Ron's mom, as you know, lives with us, and it has been a joy, and it's also been a responsibility. And so I'm taking that back to the story of Zechariah and Elizabeth because, unlike today, in the first century, it was thought that being barren or not being able to have children was seen as a sign of judgment of sin in people's lives. You know, if you weren't able to be fruitful, so that your children actually could take care of you in your old age, then you were seen as somehow less than, or even worse, as someone who had sinned and was getting judgment for that. And so we have this setting, and even though Zechariah was a priest, certainly he and Elizabeth shared this sense of loss and maybe second-class citizens of not having children in their lives. And I have to say, I have wondered, and Ron and I have talked about this before, not that we expect that children necessarily will take care of their parents, but to be a support to them when we get to be older and not having that support. So I'm leaning on the nieces and nephews, just saying, guys, leaning on the nieces and nephews to be people who will at least check on us from time to time as we have need. I want to read to you this continued story that comes from Luke chapter 1, and we're going to be looking at verses 21 to 25 today. 21 to 25. Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah. That's when he was in the, you remember he was in the temple. He has this appearance by the angel. And they wondered at his delay in the sanctuary. When he did come out, he could not speak to them. And they realized that he had seen a vision in the sanctuary. Zechariah kept motioning to them and remained unable to speak. When his time of service was ended, he went to his home. After those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived, and for 5 months she remained in seclusion. She said, "This is what the Lord has done for me when he looked favorably on me and took away the disgrace I have endured among my people." Now, I think I said a couple of weeks ago, pondering why Elizabeth spent 5 months in seclusion. Well, it may have been, I don't know for sure, but it may have been just to make sure that the pregnancy was viable. We don't know what Elizabeth's history might have been, if she'd had many miscarriages in her life or what. But the viability of the infant would have been pretty assured in the 5th month. And so for whatever reason, she used this time also to give thanks to God for the way that God had shown up in her life. And so, again, Elizabeth and as well as Zechariah were people of faith who gave God thanks for this surprising, unexpected outcome of this promise of God to them. And I wonder, N.T. Wright, who is a New Testament scholar, said, Luke is careful not to dress up the story by making Zechariah a great hero of faith. God regularly works through ordinary people doing what they normally do, who with a mixture of half faith and devotion are holding themselves ready for whatever God has in mind. And we did that sermon series just a few weeks ago on doubt and faith, and certainly we see this in Zechariah. And I hope for all of us, that we have times when we come to believe even in the midst of great questioning and doubt. And has there ever been a time in your life when you've experienced that? I want you to think about that today. When God has done something in your life that has been amazing, and yet you just could hardly believe it when it happened. I have to say that one of those times, I've had many of those in my life, but one of those times certainly was in the midst of the pandemic, and just seeing the ways in which God moved to provide for our church and for ourselves, and how we were able to stay together during that time. It was an amazing, amazing time in which God continues to remind me that God is with me no matter what. No matter what the struggle, no matter what the chaos, no matter what the doubt may be, that God is faithful to us. I pray for you and for me today that we might name those times. Name those times when God did a thing in your life that just reminded you that you weren't alone. It might have been through someone else. That came, their phone call came at just the right time. It might have been when you got a check in the mail you weren't expecting, when you needed to have that provision. It may have been at a time in which something happened to remind you that you are not alone. Elizabeth and Zechariah spent that time with God to be reminded and to be open to do what God continued to want to do in their lives through an incredible time of movement by the Spirit. May it be so in your life and mine. May we rediscover joy, have that disposition of joy that gives us the ability to expect and to look for the ways that God shows up in your life and in mine. May it be so. Amen and amen.